So we have been looking at chapter 8 has been a series of stories of Jesus teaching and preaching and doing his healing. His ministry has been going on, and Luke has the author Luke has kind of set aside the whole issue of there being both people who are hearing and people who are rejecting. He's kind of set that aside, and he's just concentrating on the people who are hearing and who are looking. Today we get some people who aren't, but they're not even characters of the story today. They're kind of more like part of the setting. But today we get a particular story, which I think we often break into two stories, but it's written in such a way that one story is inside of the other one, and it's actually one story. I really think that it's just a single story, and there are two people who are being saved, and I'm gonna lean on that word "saved," even though in my translation it doesn't say "saved." I think that the word and the way that it's translated gets translated a different way, but we're talking about salvation. Jesus has said a couple of times in chapter 8 that your faith has saved. You're saved because of your faith. And these are just two more people who are saved because of faith. And so we're going to look at them today. So we are in Luke chapter 8. We're in 40 to 56. So let's go ahead and read that. Should have turned to the page earlier. All right, so here we go. 40 to 56, chapter 8. And as Jesus returned, the people welcomed him, for they had all been waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, and he was an official of the synagogue. And he fell at Jesus' feet and began to implore him to come to his house. For he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. But as he went, the crowds were pressing against him. And a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years and could not be healed by anyone came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak, and immediately her hemorrhage stopped. And Jesus said, "Who's the one who touched me?" And while they were all denying it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone did touch me, for I was aware that power has gone out from me." When the woman saw that she had not escaped notice, she came trembling and fell down before him and declared in the presence of all the people the reason why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the house of the synagogue official, saying, "Your daughter has died. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." But when Jesus heard that, he answered him, "Do not be afraid. Only believe, and she will be made well." When he came to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter with him except Peter and James and John and the girl's father and mother. Now they were all weeping and lamenting for her, but he said, "Stop weeping, for she did not die. She has not died, but is asleep." And they began laughing at him, knowing that she had died. He, however, took her by the hand and called, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she got up immediately, and he gave orders for something to be given to her to eat. Her parents were amazed, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. So today we get two stories of two women, well, one who's almost a woman, she's 12, who are saved. Sorry. And so let's look at this. But first, let's remember where we were. Last week, we had the story of sailing across the Lake of Gennesaret, going to being overwhelmed by the seas, by the storm that came up, Jesus calming the storm, saving them. Landing, finding the man in the Gerasenes who lived in tombs, was possessed by many demons, and Jesus saved him. And then they return. So when it says that, and Jesus returned, this is the return trip from that trip over to heal that, to save that man who was full of demons. And when he returns, verse 40 reminds us that we're concentrating on the people who are receiving Jesus' word and honoring God by welcoming Jesus. These are the people, they welcomed him back. They were waiting for him, much like us. They were waiting for him to return from the other side of the lake. We are waiting for him to return from the other side of reality. We are like this group. We saw him go away, they saw him go away, and they were waiting for him to return. And when they returned, they welcomed him. This story does have some doubters in it, but they're not really characters of the story. They're more of a setting. They're more of obstacles of faith. Then in verse 41, we meet a father. His name is Jairus. So he's a leader of a synagogue. So what do we get from that? We get that not all of the people in the synagogue were rejecting Jesus. Here is someone who was leading the synagogue who came to Jesus because he had this issue. He has been hearing about Jesus, and he is not like I'm about to say the rest of the Pharisees. I don't know that he's a Pharisee, but he's not like the Pharisees and the scribes who are dead set against listening to Jesus. He hears Jesus and he comes to Jesus. This is a different kind of person. We see here that we can't just take these two groups and assume that we know who's in which group. Here's a guy, probably rich. The people who were often called officials or leaders of the synagogues were the people who bankrolled the synagogue. They were the ones who made it possible for it to exist. He's probably rich. We don't know that. But he's hearing Jesus, and he's coming to Jesus. And what does he come about? In 41, we hear that he's a father, and when he comes to Jesus, and he immediately falls at the feet of Jesus. Here is a leader, this guy, who is looked up at by the people around him, but when he comes to Jesus, he falls down at his feet. We see that a lot. We've been seeing a lot of this. Much like the man last week who ended up, he was the man, he was possessed by many demons, and when he was saved by them, people came from the city and they found him at the feet of Jesus, clothed in his right mind. And then before that, we had the woman who came to Jesus while he reclined at the table of a Pharisee, and she cleaned and anointed and kissed his feet. She was at the feet of Jesus. Over and over, we see this, that those who have faith in Jesus, not treating Jesus as an equal or as an opposition, but being at his feet. We will see two more today, and one is Jairus. I've been reminded as I've been studying this of Ruth. She was a nobody in Israel, an illegal immigrant, part of a banned nation, Moab, part of a nation specifically called out to not be mixed with. She was in desperate straits with her mother-in-law, and she needed to put her faith in a kinsman redeemer. And where do we find her? In the middle of the night, laying at the feet of Boaz, in faith that he would act on her behalf. So this is what we are seeing in Jairus. Jairus is saying, Jesus, you are the one that I can trust. You are the only one that I trust. I have put my faith in you to save my daughter. We haven't got there yet, but I am one who makes a big deal about calling Jesus in John 15, Jesus says, we are no longer servants but friends. He calls us his friends. And I make a big deal about that because it's important. However, I need to be careful not to presume that friendship makes me equal. It most certainly does not make me equal. I still need to have faith, and I still need to be at his feet as the one who is the only one who can save me. And Jairus, when he fell at Jesus' feet, implored, he begged the same word that the demons were used to talk about the demons begging Jesus to not send them to abyss. He's using the same word. He is begging Jesus to come to his house. And then now we hear why. For he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. Because he had a 12-year-old, and she was dying. A 12-year-old. Remember back a couple months ago when we were in the story of Jesus, when he was 12 years old and they went to Jerusalem, and we talked about how this was the coming of age time. This daughter is on the verge of becoming a woman, but she's dying and will not become a woman without a miraculous saving act. So Jairus, a man who would ordinarily be seen as the leader, is willing, because of his faith in Jesus, that Jesus is the solution to his daughter's problem, humiliated himself in front of this large, pressing crowd. Faith in action, taking action. Now the setting is being set for the second part of our story, this inner story. Jesus, seeing Jairus, hearing him ask him to go to his house, just starts going. Without hesitation, it seems, he just starts heading to this man's house. And the crowd that is coming with him, but it's coming with him so closely that he is being touched all around. He was being pressed in on. I know this feeling. You may not, but I used to ride the public transit in San Francisco all the time, and there were times when it was rush hour, when you literally held on to the thing above you, and there were people touching you all around you. So that's why I carry my wallet in different places. But anyways, I know this. I know why this happens. So this is an uncomfortable feeling, and here is Jairus, who has pressed through that crowd, gotten to the feet of Jesus, and now they're going to the house. Now, we meet a woman, and she, like the daughter, is not named. She has been bleeding for 12 years. How old was the daughter? 12 years old. Is this a coincidence? I don't think so. These two stories are being tied together. The terminology used for her hemorrhage is the same terminology used in Leviticus 15. This is a gynecological bleed. But this has gone on for 12 years. This woman is in the situation of Leviticus 15:25 of a gynecological bleed that continues beyond her menstruation period. And she is unclean. And according to Leviticus, after verse 25, anyone who touches her is unclean until nightfall. Anything she sits or lies on is unclean. Her bed is unclean. If anyone wants to participate in the community's life, will not touch her. And for 12 years, that's been going on for her. In fact, some translations, like the ESV, include a thing that wasn't in the translation I read earlier, where it says that she spent all her living on physicians, but she could not be healed by anyone. All her living. I think that is intentionally broad. We think making a living as receiving money, right? We think of that as money. But I think this also means that she spent her life seeking out a cure. She is not living for herself, but for a cure. Everything she has been spent on this, and nothing has saved her. Nothing has cured her. But Jesus comes to town, and she has faith that he can heal her. She doesn't want to be noticed, because that would be more people avoiding her, right? She hasn't been touched in 12 years, and probably she goes and probably hasn't been touched for 12 years. But she goes into this crowd where even Jesus, who's the center of the crowd, is being jostled around. She came up behind him and touched his garment, the hem of his garment, and her bleeding stopped immediately. Immediately, the bleeding stopped. And apparently she knew it. And Jesus knew it. He also immediately stopped and wanted to know who touched him. Peter's response here, unlike in other Gospels, is just simply an observation. You're being touched a lot. There's a lot of people touching you. Like, what do you mean somebody touched you? But Jesus insists, no, someone received power from me. And when the woman saw that she was not escaped notice, she came trembling down before him. The woman's fear of being noticed now takes on form. She has the option to not really have faith in Jesus and go away. But she chooses to have faith in him and steps forward. And where does she put herself? At Jesus' feet. She has faith that what happened to her was good and Jesus will not change what is good. And what does she do? Well, the text says she fell down before him and declared in the presence of all the people the reason why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. She declared in front of everyone her prior situation and that she had touched him and that she was immediately healed. Her faith caused her to be at Jesus' feet and to witness, to proclaim to the wonderful good work that Jesus had done for her. That's what faith caused her to do. Her faith caused her to be at Jesus' feet and to proclaim what he had done for her. That is what faithfulness looks like. Like we left the man who was saved from the demons, who proclaimed that Jesus had done for him in the city. This is what faith in Jesus looks like. It causes us to overcome our fears and discomfort, to proclaim to those around us what Jesus has done to save us. And in verse 48, Jesus puts it all together for her. He calls her daughter and says, your faith has saved you. Our translations mostly say, made you well. And we use that language to mean healed often, but it doesn't say healed. It says made well. There's more to being made well than being healed. There's more to that. And when we are more well, then when are we more well than when Jesus has saved us? Jesus saved this woman. He said, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. It is well with my soul. That's why I chose that verse, that hymn. This is all wonderful, but now poor Jairus is standing there seeing an evidence that he has put his faith in the right person, but time is ticking. This woman is now a daughter, but what about my daughter? The tension must be strong. And then, while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of the synagogue official saying, your daughter has died. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. How terrible to hear this. He has left his daughter's bedside, missed when she died, to be with Jesus because he has faith in Jesus. And this person comes and he's got to be wondering, is my faith misplaced or just mistimed? And then the person says and tells Jairus what to do. These people are being realistic. They're being pragmatic. They're even being thoughtful. Your daughter has died. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. They're being realistic. They're being pragmatic. And they are also being an absolute stumbling block to Jairus' faith. They are tempting him to give up his faith in Jesus, that Jesus is the answer. But Jesus saves Jairus too. Do not be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well. That's what it says. There it is again, made well, saved, not healed. She's dead now. Healing would not be enough. She needed saving to be made well. And Jesus says, believe, have faith, and it will happen. And when he gets to the house, he did not allow anyone to enter. So they got there, they continued to the house, and the crowd is still coming. And he tells the crowd to stay behind. He brings in, Peter, James, and John, and the girl's father and mother. So the mother must have been there too. But so the six of them go into the house, and they find in the house that there are all these friends and family and stuff, and they're weeping and lamenting for the daughter who has died. But Jesus says, stop weeping. She has not died, but is asleep. And they begin laughing at him. They begin laughing at Jesus, knowing that she has died. They continue on into the house. The crowd remains outside, and they enter the house, and another group of people act to question Jairus' faith. That's not what they're intending to do. They're intending to care for him. They're intending to weep with him, but they are questioning his faith. But Jesus takes them on and takes their derision on himself. But you have to imagine this is testing Jairus' faith. Jesus, however, took her by the hand and called, saying, "Child, arise." But his faith was justified. Jesus reached down and called the daughter to get up. And her breath returned to her, and she did get up immediately. This is one of those places in the Bible that gets used for the purpose that it isn't there for. The translation, my translation, said spirit, but the word for spirit in Greek is breath. Luke was a doctor. His point was to say she wasn't breathing. She was physically dead. But when Jesus called her, she began to breathe again, and she got up like she had been asleep. And then Jesus says to give her something to eat. This is to make clear that she is alive. She is not a spirit. She is in need of food. She needs breakfast. She has been fasting and she needs food. All of this here is meant to tell us Luke is insisting that this girl was dead and is now alive. She was not breathing, and now she's breathing. She was not needing food, and now she needs food. This is a transition. He's not arguing with Jesus. She did wake up like she was asleep. She did just get up. But that's because Jesus is who Jesus is, not because of any difference in her physical situation. And then we get to see how faith carries out. Her parents were amazed. And we see that faith does not eliminate amazement. Jairus had faith, and his daughter was saved, and he was amazed. Amazement is not at odds with faith. The woman earlier had been trembling when she answered Jesus. Faith does not get rid of fear. Unlike the woman who Jesus specifically asked to witness to the front of the crowd, Jairus is instructed to tell no one. So here we have faith. Faith caused both Jairus and the woman to act. It caused them both to act. It didn't get rid of their feelings. They still felt fear. They still felt doubt, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure that Jairus felt some doubt. They still felt urgency. But faith doesn't get rid of those feelings. Those feelings are still part of us, but we have to have faith to act in spite of those things. And then when our faith is shown to be right, we can be amazed. It's good to be amazed. If we are seeing someone who is dead and then comes to life, it doesn't matter if we expected it or not. That's amazing. That's wonderful. We should still feel that amazement. That is part of faith. It doesn't mean that you weren't faithful. It doesn't mean that you have to be falsely, I don't know, before it happens, oh, I just know Jesus is going to deal with it. You can admit that it doesn't look good. You can admit that and still have faith, just like you can have faith and still be amazed. It isn't a problem. It's an accurate response. It's what worship is. And even so, where Jesus called the woman to testify, and in fact, he made her testify in front of that whole crowd. He actually said what happened, and she told and she witnessed what Jesus had done. Here, he tells Jairus not to speak. But look what Jairus has already done. He has already acted. He's already come to Jesus in the midst of the crowd, admitted that his daughter was dying, and asked him to come. And that crowd is going to see the daughter up and about, and they're going to be like, they're going to put two and two together. They're going to figure this out. He doesn't need to do any more witnessing. He has already witnessed to his faith in Jesus, and his faith in Jesus has caused his daughter to come back to life. That's probably not a good way to say it. His faith in Jesus was well placed because Jesus did raise his daughter back from the dead. But faith made it possible for Jairus to do everything that he did. Faith made it possible for this woman, who is now a daughter of Jesus, to do what was necessary so that she could be saved. That has been the theme through this whole chapter. Your faith is what makes it possible for Jesus to save you. You have to put your faith in Jesus. You have to fall at his feet and say, you are the only one who can save me. And then it will happen. Jesus will do it. And when it happens, it's okay to be amazed. It's okay to say, wow, that's wonderful. That's great. Faith does not make us emotionless. Faith enhances our emotions, if you will. It actually makes it possible for us to get to the place where we see what Jesus has done. So what does that mean for us? Well, this is a picture. We get two pictures of people who are living by faith. They are bold they're bold in the face of things keeping them from doing it. That woman had to go into a crowd of people who, if they recognized her, would be appalled that they had touched her. She had to go into that. She knew what she was doing, and yet she did what was necessary because her faith made it possible. So our faith helps us to act. It doesn't change our feelings necessarily, but it helps us to actually act and do what needs to be done. And then the second thing that it does is when we experience that salvation, it causes us to witness to what Jesus has done for us. That's all. We don't have to convince anybody of what Jesus did for us. We don't have to convince people that Jesus exists. We just are called to say, I put my faith in Jesus, and it was the right place to put my faith. That's all we have to tell the people around us. We just have to witness to our experience of Jesus. Jesus did what I had faith in him to do. He saved me. And this word saved is always in the past tense. So it's not that we're completely saved. It's not that we're done being saved. It's not that we won't need more saving. But he did save us. He has saved us. And we can point to that. And our faith is what we are pointing to. Our faith makes it possible. It's not what we did. It's not who we were. It's not what we paid for. It's none of those things. It's only the fact that I turned to Jesus, got at his feet, and said, you are the only one who can save me. That's faith. That is something that we can do every day. There are times when, I don't know, I can't imagine times when I am not turning and seeing Jesus and being like, you have saved me, or I need you to save me today, or something like that. That's always going on for me. So I hope that's true for you too. Be at Jesus' feet. When you're scared, when you're trembling, turn to Jesus. Go to his feet. He is the only one who can save us. That's what we have for